Thank you. Could you all please rise for the Deputy Lord Mayor, Bruce Reynolds?
Thank you, CEO. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Perth February 2025 agenda briefing session. I formally declare the session open at 5 p.m. and I respectfully acknowledge the
Almighty God, under whose providence we hold responsibility for this city, grant us wisdom to understand its present needs, foresight to anticipate its future growth, and grace to serve our fellow citizens with integrity and selfless devotion. And to thee be all blessing and glory forever. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Please note that in accordance with the Local Government Act 1995, this meeting is being broadcasted and recorded and made available on the City's website following this meeting. Item 3, attendance. We have in attendance Councillor Bevan, Councillor Doshi, Councillor Gobbett, Councillor Coe, Councillor Lisa and Councillor Wellard. Not in attendance, we have an apology for Councillor David Gonsalves, and the Lord Mayor Basil Zemflis is currently on an approved leave of absence. I remind councillors to please submit any applications for leave prior to next week's ordinary council meeting. And in addition, I welcome the CEO and other officers here in attendance, and any of the members of the public and media in attendance. Can elected members please acknowledge that you've had sufficient time to read and consider the agenda items present this evening? Very good. And I'd also like to remind our EMs, elected members, please refrain from using your mobile phones with the exceptions of emergencies. In the event of an emergency, please pay attention to the directions given by the City of Perth staff. We now move on to item 4, which is announcements by the Lord Mayor. We have not received any announcements from the Lord Mayor. Item 5, CEO, disclosures of interest. Do we have any disclosures received?
Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor. Councillor Steve Wellard has disclosed a financial interest in 11.1 in that Roy Hill Hancock is a customer of WAB TEC Corporation, of which he is employed, and that relates to a property at 101 Bentnor Avenue, West Perth. Councillor Catherine Lisa has disclosed an impartiality interest in item 12.2 as an adjacent property is on the Heritage State Register for consistency and completeness. She is a councillor on the Heritage Council of WA. Councillor Liam Gobbett has disclosed an impartiality interest in item 16.1 as he has attended Lightscape 2023 in his capacity as Deputy Lord Mayor representing the City. He also attended Lightscape 2024 in accordance with the attendance at events policy. No association has been formed, and this represents an impartiality interest only. Councillor Catherine Lisa has disclosed an indirect financial interest in relation to item 16.2 as she has recently written a consulting report for Lawson Apartments SP 1467. You have disclosed a proximity interest in item 16.2 as you own property next door to 178 Aberdeen Street, Northbridge, which is subject of a grant application. Councillor Catherine Lisa has disclosed a proximity interest in item 16.2 as she has been given differing advice regarding disclosures, and it seems prudent to adhere to the most conservative of these and disclose the same interest as Deputy Lord Mayor Bruce Reynolds. Councillor Catherine Lisa has disclosed an impartiality interest in item 16.2 for consistency and completeness, as she is a councillor on the Heritage Council of WA. Councillor Raj Doshi has disclosed a direct financial interest in item 16.2 as she is an owner-occupier in the strata scheme at 189 Adelaide Terrace, and a heritage grant application has been made by the Strata Council. Councillor Raj Doshi has disclosed a direct financial interest in item 17.2 as she is an owner-occupier in the strata scheme at 189 Adelaide Terrace, and a question relating to tree roots on private land at this address was raised at the elected general meeting. Councillor Liam Gobbett has disclosed an impartiality interest in item 17.2 as, in relation to recommendation 4, staff and board members of Pride WA are known to him personally and he is a financial member of Pride WA. In relation to recommendation 6, his resident abuts the Plain Street car park. However, this represents an impartiality interest only. And finally, Councillor Catherine Leeser has disclosed an indirect financial interest in item 20.3 as she has recently contracted Civic Legal to carry out some legal work.
Cool. Thank you very much, CEO. Are there any other disclosures of interest from the floor? Councillor Leeser.
There was one I submitted previously for 20.3. Have you read that out, CEO?
Councillor, if it is correct to say, as you have recently contracted Civic Legal.
Yeah.
Yes.
And did you read out the one for me for 11.2?
11.2, yes. Adjacent properties on the Heritage State Register.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to 6.1, public questions. Public question time will be held at the Ordinary Council meeting of next week. 6.2, deputations. CEO, have we received any deputations?
Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor. One deputation has been received speaking against item 11.1, 2842, lot 101 Ventnor Avenue, West Perth, proposed wall sign. One deputation has been received speaking against item 11.2, 190, lot 101 and 200, lot 40, St George's Terrace, Perth, proposed digital variable wall sign displaying third-party advertising content. And one deputation has been received speaking for item 16.1, major leveraging opportunity, Lightscape 2025.
Thank you, CEO. I'll now move on to deputations. Please be reminded, as per the rules of the chamber, there is a 5-minute limitation for each deputation. Councillor Wellard has disclosed a financial interest in item 11.1, so he will be required to leave the meeting during this deputation. That will be the first deputation, Councillor Wellard. So we'll ask you to come back shortly. And whilst you do that, we'll now invite Tane Evershed representing Planning Solutions and Chris Lilly and John Mayle representing Hancock Prospecting, who are speaking against the recommendation in item 11.1 to please come forward.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Before I start, do you mind if I just hand out some information to councillors? Thank you. Thank you for that indulgence, Lord Mayor, Deputy Lord Mayor. Good evening, Deputy Lord Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. My name is Tane Evershed from Planning Solutions and I represent the owner of number 28 Ventnor Ave, West Perth. The building known as Hipple House is headquarters to Hancock Prospecting, along with the iconic Australian apparel brands of Rossi Boots, Dryserbone and Kidman Hats. As the Deputy Lord Mayor mentioned, I've got with me Chris Lilly and John Mayle from Hancock Prospecting Proprietary Limited, who are available to answer any questions as well if you have any. Firstly, I draw your attention to our briefing note, which was emailed to councillors over the weekend, which outlines why the increased sign area should be approved. Ultimately, it's within the power of this council to grant discretion for the larger sign. And before I make any further comments, I want to be clear. This sign is used to advertise and promote the business interests of Hancock Prospecting. It's not proposed to be used for third-party advertising. Now, when asked to apply discretion, the context of the building and its setting are important. In this case, you need to decide whether the circumstances are unique enough to warrant discretion and approve the sign. And council, as I say, this proposal is unique. Now, I refer you to the first page of the handout I've given you. Unlike the majority of buildings fronting Richard Street with close setbacks of between 2.5 and 8.5 metres, Hipple House is set back approximately 45 metres from Richardson Street. The consequence of such a large setback is that it diminishes the visual impact and effectiveness of the sign. And whilst the existing approval for the sign at 40 square metres in area, its proportion to the building, the proportion of the approved sign of 40 square metres to the building makes it look like a postage stamp on an envelope. And for those of you that have had the opportunity to go out and see the sign, I hope you would agree, and I'm sure you would. Now, we're not asking for you to approve a postcard. We're simply asking you to increase the sign size so it's more effective, legible, and visually pleasing without dominating the facade of the building. And at around 17% of the facade area, I think it's difficult to say that it would dominate. Now, I'll refer you to the subsequent pages of our handout, which is an excerpt from our visual assessment. Unless you're stationary, standing in front of the building and staring directly at the sign, its visibility from the street is filtered from most vantage points because of the dense tree canopy in the area. And finally, I note we're proposing a temporary approval for 3 years, so it's not a forever sign. This time-limited approval should give council some comfort. Once the time's up, the sign will need to be removed. So having regard to all of these factors, we respectfully request you move our alternative recommendation at council next week. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much for that, Tane. I'll ask the councillors if they've got any questions, and I will remind the councillors that the questions will be to the deputation, not to administration. Any questions from administration we'll handle when we table the item a little bit later in the meeting. Councillor Doshi.
Thank you, through you, Presiding Member. May I ask if you've had any direct feedback from the community or any of the local businesses in that vicinity at this moment with regards to the sign that's currently there?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Right. And my second question is there any reason why that sign's only going to be there for 3 years?
Yeah, so we sought a temporary approval for a couple of reasons. So we have first of all, we've got an existing approval that's for 3 years. So we felt it was appropriate to apply to align this approval with the existing approval should we be successful. Secondly, the city is looking at progressing a new town planning scheme. There may be some changes in the planning framework in the future, so it's not unreasonable for the sign to be there for 3 years, and once and if the planning framework changes that may result in different provisions, then it's an opportunity for us to revisit that as well. So reflecting on my comment, it's not a forever sign. If the planning framework scheme does change, it can come down, and we can go again if we need to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can someone go and welcome Councillor Wellard back? And whilst we'll do that, I'll invite Chris Nolan from Urbis and John Malcolm, who are speaking against the recommendation in item 11.2, to please come forward and make a deputation.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, councillors and officers. Before I start, could we please hand out some information to the councillors? Thank you again, Deputy Lord Mayor, councillors and officers. My name is John Malcolm. I'm the Head of Asset Management from 5/8. I'm here to make an introduction and pass to Chris Nolan, our consultant from Urbis. Just quickly, 58 own 190 St George's Terrace, and we've undertaken extensive refurbishment to positively activate what was an old and dated building to a vibrant, activated destination in the core of the CBD. We've appointed Urbis to assist us with the activation of a blank facade to positively contribute more towards the activation piece that we've wanting to pursue. So I'll pass on to Chris. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Good evening, councillors. We've got essentially a PowerPoint presentation, but in hard copies, so if you could just turn the pages as we go, that'd be great. In terms of the proposal and background, must be the flavour of the month, but the proposal before you is for the installation of a wall-mounted large format digital sign on the western-facing wall of 190 St George's Terrace. For absolute transparency, this is in part for third-party messaging and advertising, but also with the expectation that a portion of the time will be reserved for public arts and other installations, placemaking, related potentially to the Tatterang business, but potentially other government initiatives as well. This has been ongoing for a while. We've had pre-lodgement discussions dating back to May 2022 with the city, and this has evolved, I guess, with the city's signage policy. Critically, there's some key buildings from a heritage perspective around this application, and the Heritage Council have confirmed that there's no direct impact from their side of things. Also, which is really important when you're considering these things, is road safety. And it is very rare, but we actually have a letter of support from Main Roads WA in the context of this proposal. Just to flip over, setting a little bit of the scene, the first image you see there was our original proposal. So yes, it was a pretty big sign. 130 square metres is a big sign in any scheme of things. A lot of messaging, I guess, back from the city that the proportionality and impact, I guess, from a facade perspective was too much. So if you flip over, the team at 58 and their architects have substantially reduced the size of the sign by almost 50 square metres, which is not a small amount. And we feel in terms of dominance and proportionality, in the context of what is probably the biggest blank facade in the CBD, we feel that this is appropriate. Flipping on again, just in terms of compare and contrast, and probably similar to the previous speaker, in terms of a compliant sign and the 20 square metres in the context of the policy, that just gives you a bit of context in terms of what that would look like in the scheme of that facade, that rather large facade. It kind of loses the purpose, and all messaging essentially is really lost. And to flip on again, in terms of lowering the sign entirely consistent with the policy, we might as well not do it. So that's just a bit of a compare and contrast exercise. Now, obviously, there is the discretion to approve a larger sign. And the key things in the context of the policy is clause 7.2, which talks about the neighbourhood principles and area principles, which I'll touch on in a little bit. Maximum of one third-party advertising sign on the subject site. We've ticked that box. Not located on a residential building. Tick. The sign is not facing or nearby a residential dwelling in terms of light spill and the like, which is really important. Design and construction of the sign is fully integrated with overall development. We think that in terms of the proportionality as it relates to, again, a very large blank facade, that this is appropriate. And again, the size of the sign does not visually dominate the wall. Again, in terms of the reduction of the size, we think that that ticks that box as well. In terms of the neighbourhood and area principles, the central neighbourhood policy principles talk about commercial activity, and obviously this is trying to generate retail and commercial activity. It talks about pedestrian focus, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. And size and scale that would not detract from pedestrian safety and road users. And again, I'll touch on that in terms of the road safety assessment. St George's Terrace area, again, a lot of similar things that are mentioned there in terms of pedestrian relationship and the importance, I guess, of relating back to a public square, which we say this actually does in the context of Cloister Square. Just conscious of time, so I'll just flip on to the next space, to the next slide. And that, in terms of the relationship, this photo was taken from today. You've got one of the busiest pedestrianised intersections in the CBD. In the background, you've got Cloister Square, and you can see in terms of how that actually all relates from a pedestrian perspective. It's not just the square, it is this broad area here, which at a lunchtime, morning peak, evening peak, highly pedestrianised. People use the square, people sit, people have coffee, dinner and the like in there. So it is actually responding to the policy. Again, I'll move on. In terms of road safety, Main Roads WA have supported this, which is critical. And I've done a few of these, and they live and die by road safety. And to get that letter of support is important. I won't go any further than that. And the reasons for refusal I've touched on here, but essentially you've got a fantastic opportunity. Context is king here. You've got a large building, blank facade, on St George's Terrace, probably the second busiest road in the CBD. If you are going to have a larger sign, this feels like the right location to implement, and it is responding back to your policy in terms of a public space and public plaza. Thanks very much. I've probably gone over my time. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, you've probably just scraped in. Thank you very much for your deputation. Are there any questions? This sounds tinny. Can I have a bit of more bass? Any questions from the floor? Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Have you considered fourth floor up above the fig tree? So
yeah, no, I was just talking about that with the client. Not out of the question. And certainly in terms of putting forward an alternative recommendation next week, that's something that we can potentially work through.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. In terms of the third-party signage, what types of content, like could you give us an example of what type of content would be on those screens?
I'll probably lean on John a little bit here, but it could be anything in terms of retailers. Yeah, John, you want to actually, it could be retail, it could be food, it could be commercial in terms of businesses and the like.
That's right. It's just the broad range of advertising.
Yep.
Within advertising, that legislation.
Yep.
But in terms of, are we looking at third-party marketing that supports sort of the area or supports Western Australia? Or
Yeah, no, they should be linking back to the businesses that are in the CBD, essentially. So whether that's food, whether that's an accounting firm or the like, that's the intent, yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? One quick question from me. The third-party operator, have you decided on who that may be at this stage? That'll give us a bit of an indication on the type of advertising.
We've been liaising with JC Decau, but we haven't entered into agreement. We were seeking DA approval first before we finalise the contractual arrangements. We do have support from Cloisters next door for an overhang licence, so they're positively engaged with us as well. And in terms of advertising content, the detail of that is yet to be resolved, but essentially we're keeping a fairly broad remit.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move on to our last deputation for this evening. I'd like to invite Sue McDougall and Ian Kiley representing the Botanic Gardens of Kings Park. Hello, Sue.
Hello, Deputy Lord Mayor, elected members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about Lightscape once again. Lightscape brings light to Perth in winter, and it's truly a unique event, an internationally acclaimed event showcasing the West Australian Botanic Garden where natural landscape is the hero. Lightscape seeks to inspire and attract visitors to the CBD and the West Australian Botanic Garden. And I believe these visitors would not have put the two together, especially when we're talking on a winter night in the middle of winter through the week. In the inaugural year, 184,000 visitors were captivated by the spectacular light show. Over a 1.8 kilometre trail through the Botanic Garden was officially declared a sellout. Now, sales in 2024 were down, but we still saw 120,000 visitors experience Lightscape in winter. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't on our side and torrential rain did dampen the enthusiasm a little, but an average of 3,000 visitors per night enjoyed Lightscape in 2024 despite the weather. Now, I think the Perth public are becoming more resilient to the weather extremes, and a little rain doesn't seem to dampen anyone. It's only severe weather warning that closes the nights to ensure public safety. And this is one of the reasons why we run Lightscape from June to July, because historical weather data tells us that the chance of severe weather warning is higher in August. So in delivering our third Lightscape, our challenge is to activate and inspire to entice first-time visitors to Lightscape, return patrons, and come again and bring their friends a second or third time. And we at BGBA believe we can do it. with an even bigger and brighter trail featuring more than 20 installations backed by an engaging marketing campaign over the months. And it doesn't happen by itself. Strong partnerships and support from our city results in a unique event accessible for families and the Perth community. The activation of Lightscape builds on the already successful event City of Perth has delivered to activate the CBD and surrounding areas. And Lightscape continues, something we're very proud of, to be dominated by families, with just over 18% of family tickets sold in 2024. We add 7% of tickets to children, which totals 25%. And this doesn't include the 2% tickets allocated to children under 20. Under 2, not under 20, sorry. Children under 2 are free to enter, but what that does reinforce to me is how important Lightscape is for young families. An updated offering for families is set to be launched in 2025, and we understand the cost of living's made it much harder for families. So we've really worked hard to bring the family price of 2 children and 2 adults, so a family ticket, down to under $100. So it's important for BGPA to ensure that Lightscape is as accessible and accessible as possible for as many as possible. And we're proud to say that 90% of visitors indicate that Lightscape is a family-friendly event. So 2025, I must say, is the year of the bug. We're captivating conservation messaging of Can't Live Without You, and we're showcasing the importance of the environmental message close to our heart, adopting the educate to entertain model. 2025 promises to be full of fun, wonderment and unique installations. With interactive elements, the message Can't Live Without You would bring on such a different meaning. And with increased accessibility, we work closely with the City of Perth Access and Inclusion Advisory Group. We've been able to ensure the 2-kilometre trail, remembering we're on a sloping site, 18 hectares in a very sloping site, is as accessible as possible. So Lightscape is an example of successful partnerships together with the city over the past 2 years, and it's activated winter in Perth with unforgettable experiences. It aligns with City of Perth's branding, City of Light, and after the success of the last 2 years, there's an opportunity to own winter activations throughout Perth. Survey data reveals 63% of attendees were aware that Lightscape was supported by the City of Perth in 2023, and in 2024, 77% of attendees recalled City of Perth involvement. So in 2025, we want to extend this and have a target of 80%. On sale date for 2025 is the end of February, and our research reveals that customers are purchasing tickets to events later than ever before, and we believe a later official launch will allow the momentum to build. We all know parking is limited in Kings Park, so there's a focus again on public transport, and we're targeting 20% of Lightscape visitors to use public transport. Dedicated signage, targeted messaging through ticket providers is only a couple of strategies we've put in place to increase public transport uptake. So we have a world-class botanic garden, and we've been voted Australia's most visited attraction. So we believe an opportunity to exist to build on previous successful Lightscapes for the city and BGPA and deliver a quality family event in winter in the City of Perth. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sue. That's great. And thank you to all our deputations. All very well put, and further consideration for council for next week.
Thank you.
No problem. Oh, sorry, any questions? Councillor Doshi.
Thank you, through you, Dylan. Thank you for that great deputation, Sue. We always love the event. However, I did want to ask the question, if the City of Perth weren't the presenting partners, for example, is there any risk of this event not happening at all in 2025?
No, this event
in the pipeline.
Yeah, this event will happen if City of Perth's not the presenting partner. We just can't deliver as much. So we will have a backup. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Wellard.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've got 2 questions, actually. First of all, again, thank you for the presentation and for the great success of the 2 past previous years. Recognising the work that's going on to bring the price for families down, I think that's very important and strong feedback from prior years. So anything you can do to do that is very much appreciated. My 2 questions are, what interactions are you going to have with local businesses in the West Perth area to help them partner with the Lightscape event?
Yeah, thank you. We have an increased team understanding how important it is. So we have a dedicated team. We've got 2 full-time staff members, so we've increased our resources to be able to engage. So we've started to put opportunities and offers together from our presenting partner, from our ticketing suppliers, to then be able to present that to the local businesses. And what we want to do is be able to encourage, because we can't park in Kings Park, is to be able to encourage a complete package. So having a discounted ticket, or have a ticket offering, having something to eat, grabbing a bite to eat, and then being able to walk in to the starter Lightscape. So that's something that's really important, and something that we really want to develop, not just for Lightscape, for long-term relationships with the local community.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And Deputy Lord Mayor, second question is regarding last year we had an overlap with the state government's similar event. So can you explain what steps are being made this year to make sure that Lightscape remains a standalone event on the event calendar?
It was very unfortunate, wasn't it, that last 2 weeks? So we have been assured that that won't happen again. So from discussions that our manager of engagements had, we've got close working relationships, because that particular event happens in Kings Park also. And we've been reassured that that announcement won't happen again until, that announcement for that event for Borna will happen after Lightscape's finished.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just a quick reminder, statements before questions probably frowned upon. We'll let that one go through, but we just don't want it to become a habit. Over to Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Thank you for your deputation, Sue. Once again, just like Councillor Doshi said, a great event, and I was very pleased to go there. Is there a link with hospitality in the area and the city of Perth where people can dine early? I know in hospitality we had early bird eating, which is a promotion for hospitality where they offer discounts. Is that something you can build on here, where people get a discount, or they dine early, then catch the bus up and entertain themselves by viewing the Lightscape?
Absolutely. And that's where we want to have that engagement. And I know our team's been working hard with that. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity, because the first session is at 5:30, so it can be the other way. So between 5:30 and 8:30, I think it is. So then we could have either early bird one way or the other. So we're working with that. We trialled it a little bit last year and it was very successful.
Follow-up question for Councillor Doshi.
Thank you, through you, DLM. I just have a question around transportation. So last year, I know that there was obviously the buses that went straight up to Kings Park, but that was really the only way you could get there. Do you have any other connections? Do you have anything different this year that would make it easier for people to be around the CBD using the food and beverage outlets and then heading up to Kings Park? Because obviously it's quite remote for young families.
It is, isn't it? So, and it is quite a walk in. So we acknowledge that. So we did have every night the shuttle bus for 15 minutes every night, and that left from the train station. We also have that, and if I get my bus numbers right, but the 935 bus that comes straight up St George's Terrace. We also have the Blue Cat that comes through, and we had a few people take the Blue Cat because it's a direct way up, and then took the shuttle bus back because it's a direct way down. So, and having the continuity, or having it every 15 minutes, means that you don't, if you've got kids, you don't want to be hanging around for very long. So, and if we can, we had it 7 minutes in peak times and 15 minutes, but last year was 15 minutes, so we've got that opportunity too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Coe.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming and talking to us about this. I can see you can actually capture the data for which suburbs visitors come from. You've got northern and southern suburbs. My question is, have you considered offering a concession for City of Perth residents?
I think they actually have considered that, and I can revert to our manager of engagement, Ian, with us to see where that's got to. But I know that there has been discussion and consideration, so we'll definitely table that and look at what opportunities there are looking for City of Perth residents. Because, I mean, you can just catch the bus easily, can't you? Yeah, or walk across the road.
Sorry, I think what I'm trying to get at is City of Perth is partnering with this. We're having more people come in the city. It's a bit of an inconvenience for people that live in the city as well. So I think just keeping in mind, the city of Perth residents do contributor rates, and if we can get even just a slight concession, that'll be considered. Yeah.
I'll definitely table that and take that back to the team. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sue, and again, thank you all for your deputations. Items 7 through to 10 will be dealt with at the Ordinary Council meeting of next week, which will be confirmation of minutes, question by members not given due notice, and correspondence and petitions. We'll now move on to our reports section of proceedings. Okay, so item 11, the Planning and Economic Development Alliance report, which is 28 to 42 Ventnor Ave West Perth, proposed wall sign DA 2024/5471. Councillor Wellard has already indicated a financial interest and be required to leave the chamber if there are any questions from the floor. We have received some questions with notice. There was 3 questions from myself and 3 questions from Councillor Lisa. I am satisfied that I've seen the administration's reply and considered that. Councillor Lisa, have you seen the administration's reply and you're satisfied?
Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, no problem at all. Thank you. Are there any questions from the floor? Okay, no problem at all. In that case, what we'll do is we'll move across to 11.2. Which is 190 and 200 St George's Terrace, Perth. The proposed digital variable sign displaying third-party advertising content, DA 2024/5311. Councillor Lisa has declared an interest of impartiality. We have received a deputation. I have had 3 questions with notice, and I'm satisfied that administration have replied to those accordingly. Are there any questions from the floor? Okay, we can move on. One. Oh, where are we? Why can't I see that one? Okay, cool. Item 12, Community Development Alliance reports. There are no reports tabled. Item 13, Infrastructure and Operation Alliance reports. There are no reports tabled. Item 14.1, City of Perth Parking Fee Review. We have received several questions with notice, 4 from myself, 3 from Councillor Gobbett and 4 from Councillor Lisa. Councillor, for administration's responses?
Yep.
Yes,
Thank
please
you.
speak up. Thank you. Are there any questions on this item from the floor? Thank you. Moving to 15.1, monthly financial statements for December 2024. There are no questions with notice. Are there any questions from the floor? Okay, we can move on now to 15.2, schedule of accounts paid December 2024. Any questions? There are no questions with notice. Any questions from the floor? Thank you. 15.3, mid-year budget review. There are no questions with notice. Are there any questions from the floor? Thank you. 15.4, corporate business plan 24-25 to the period 27-28. Quarterly progress report. There have been no questions with notice. Are there any questions from the floor? No, thank you. 16.1, Engagement and Activation Alliance reports. Sorry, that's 16. 16.1 is Major Leveraging Opportunity 2025 Lightscapes. We have received no questions with notice. Are there any questions from the floor? Okay, we'll address that next week. 16.2, the 2024-25 Heritage Conservation Grant Council report. Interests that have been declared. I've declared a proximity interest. If there are any questions from the floor, I'll be required to leave the chamber and Councillor Gobbett will receive the chair. Councillor Lisa has an indirect financial and proximity report and will be required to leave the chamber if there are questions from the floor. And Councillor Doshi has a direct financial and will be required to leave the chamber if there are any questions from the floor. There are no questions with notice on this item. Are there any questions from the floor? Okay, so we can move on to the next item. 17, Chief Executive Alliance Reports. 17.1, the Local Law Review, Adoption of Amendment Local Law and Waste Local Law. We've received 2 questions with notice from Councillor Leeser. Councillor Leeser, are you satisfied with the administration response?
Yes, that's satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the floor? No, thank you. Moving through to 17.2, considerations of decisions from the Electors' General Meeting. There are some interests that have been declared. Councillor Doshi has a direct financial interest and will be required to leave the chamber if there are questions, and Councillor Gobbett has an impartiality interest. Questions with notice. We've received 4 from Councillor Bevan. Councillor Bevan, are you satisfied with the administration response?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any questions from the floor? Okay, thank you. We'll deal with that one next week as well.
Can I just, sorry, Lord Mayor, Deputy Lord.
Is it a question?
Yes, it certainly is.
Okay, in that case, we'll need to have the councillors I've just mentioned leave the chamber. You're okay, Councillor Gobbett, to stay.
17.2.
Yes.
Item number 5, in response to decision 4, with the expression of interest process, can I just ask what is the timing for that, and when do we expect to have that resolved? And will that decision go before council, or will it be a decision by staff?
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Through you, CEO.
Thank you. If we might take that on notice. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay. My second question to that, do we have a way of speeding up the expression of interest process due to the fact that the tenants now have a number of items on their agenda that need time to proceed with, and it would be helpful if they knew what their future was going to be at these premises?
Thank you for the question. Again, through to you, CEO.
Thank you very much, Deputy Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. We had last night our regular committee meeting for the LGBTQIA plus group, and your question is very much aligned to some of the questions that were raised as part of that committee, and it was I think very helpful to better understand some of the other extenuating factors that would contribute to us possibly moving that process along as a little bit quicker than anticipated, noting that the current arrangement concludes in November. That's not ideal timing. So once this matter has been determined, we would look to really activate as soon as possible so we could give some certainty, and ideally looking some 3 months out, I think, from that date would be fair and reasonable. Thank you very much for raising.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. If we could please have Councillor Doshi return to the chamber. Okay, moving right along. Through to 17.3, revocation of Council Policy 1.4, recordings and live streaming meetings of Council. We have not received any questions with notice. Are there any questions from the floor? Thank you. 18 committee reports, there are nil. 19 motions of which notice has been given. Item 19, motions of which notice have been given will be dealt with next week at the ordinary council meeting. Item 20, matters of which this meeting may be closed. Items 20.1, 20.2 and 20.3 are designated confidential in accordance with section 5.23, 2D and A of the Local Government Act 1995. If any councillors have any questions relating to these items tonight, we'll be moving behind closed doors and pausing the live stream. Can I ask if there's any questions from the floor? Okay. Item 21. Okay. Item 20, there are urgent business. This item will be dealt with next week at the ordinary council meeting. And with that, there will be no further business today that we will need to attend to. I declare that the agenda briefing session is now closed, at effectively 5:44 p.m. Thank you all for your attendance.